Chapter 1. Please don't do this, she cried. Her hand went to her heart and rubbed circles as if it could ease the pain he was inflicting. She could see the smirk on his face form. He took a step towards her, making her take a step back, but that action seemed to anger him. So his strides quickened, and when he was standing directly in front of her, he grabbed a handful of her hair, causing a yelp to escape her. Why would I want a loser like you? Aiden snapped in her face as he scowled at her. But a hand collided with her face, making her fall to the ground. Everly could feel the blood dripping down her lip as she looked up at him. No, we are not, he said, hate filled in his eyes. He never wanted to be with her. His brother had marked another to do he could avoid his own bond. Tears streamed down her face as she took in what he was about to do. It was rare for one to reject their mate, unheard of for an alpha to do it. But she knew why he was doing it. She was the only human in their pack. Her parents found her in the woods abandoned and asked her alpha's father if they could keep her since they couldn't have children of their own, and he said yes. So she wasn't a wolf and was okay with that. Everyone here treated her all right. She got along well with them, but when Aiden and Aaron took over as alpha last year, Aiden started acting different towards her. He wasn't as mean or hostile like he would always be. But today, when he grabbed her when she tripped, she felt a rush of tingles against her skin. She knew. Her mom explained it to her once that sparks and tingles cascade on your skin when your mate touches you. She didn't have a wolf to tell her if he was his mate or not. She was only 20, he was 22, so if she was, he had to have known for a few years and ignored it. But his sudden behavior change over the past year is what she didn't get. If he didn't want her, why wait a whole year to do it? Was it his wolf that wanted her and not him? I'm begging you, Aiden, please. Everly tried again to get him not to reject her. It hurts worse for a human than it does for a wolf. I need a strong Luna, not some human. He narrowed his eyes at her. He sucked in a deep breath, his wolf howling in pain at his human. I, Aiden Parker, reject you, Everly Reynolds, as my mate and Luna of the River Ash Pack. I also banish you and declare you a rouge from henceforth until you find a new pack to call home. The sharp pain that ripped into her heart hurt as bad as the tear from the pack bond did. Accept it, Everly, she heard him growl. It was rare for a human to be bonded to a pack, but her parents didn't want her to smell like a rouge or be mistaken for a hunter in the pack, so they asked if she could be added into it so she would smell like them. Thankfully, her parents weren't alive to see her be banished now, or they would be so disappointed. Hi, Everly Reynolds, accept your rejection, and that's when her pain intensified in her chest. You have 2 hours to get off my land. Aiden snapped. He was ignoring his own pain as he began walking away from her. Everly quickly got to her feet and ran through the woods where Aiden dragged her after her shift at the hospital and towards her house. She had to pack as much as she could into her Jeep and get the hell out of here. But if she showed up on another alpha's pack land, she would be considered a threat. They would mistake her as a hunter and most likely kill her. As she began throwing things into bags, Everly heard her phone ring. She looked at the caller ID and seen it was her best friend. She couldn't tell her she was leaving over the phone, because if she did, she would show up with her own bags and go rouge for her. She couldn't let her do that. So she turned her phone off and quickly wrote her a note and placed it on the kitchen counter after writing down everything that happened. Jocelyn had a key, so she knew she would see it. When she was finished getting her things packed up, an hour had already passed. She threw her bags into her Jeep and took one last glance at her home before jumping in the car and speeding off. About half an hour later, she reached the borders of the pack and she slowed down so they could lift the gate up. A tear leaked from her eye when she seen Aiden step out of his car and began walking towards her. She looked away from him when he stood by the window. I asked the alpha of the Yarrow pack to take you in. Everly looked at him. You asked that disgusting pervert to take me in? I'm better off living amongst the damn rouges, Aiden. He shook his head. Yes, he rejected and banished her, but he didn't want her living with those insane creatures. You can't sleep in the unclaimed territory, Everly. I wouldn't have to if you didn't banish me. She snapped at him through clenched teeth. Aiden was always meaner than his twin brother Aaron. AUT to banish me because he rejected me was extremely harsh. Like, who does that? Give me a day. I'll find someone else who can take you in. Everly shook her head and laughed dryly. I don't need you or your help, Aiden. See, this is what I'm talking about. You never listen. And you wonder why I rejected you. Aiden spat at her lowly so his men couldn't hear him. Who knew what they would think of him if they knew she was his mate? No, you did it because you wanted a strong Luna. I'm sorry I didn't live up to your standards. She put her foot down on the accelerator and floored out of the pack. Hearing him trying to defend his actions for what he did made her physically ill, and she wanted to hit him for it. There was no reason behind it. It was because she was human, and that was it. She can't help who she was. As the sun began to set, Everly was becoming tired of driving. She pulled over on the edge of the wooded area and rested her head against the headrest. She then reached over and pulled out a water bottle from the case in her passenger seat. Good thing she stopped at that convenience store before she left, otherwise she wouldn't have snacks or water. She was on the border of the unclaimed territory. She knew she wasn't far from the point to where she would end up having no choice but to go into it. Everly thought about going towards a human settlement, since most humans in the world knew about the supernatural beings living in the world, and the ones that didn't were just blind to it. She also thought about going to the enchanted forest where an abundant amount of different kinds of supernatural creatures lives. But to get there, she had to get through more than 400 miles of unclaimed territory of rogues. She didn't know what option seemed best. Turning the vehicle off, she decided to rest for a while. After half an hour, she jolted upright, hearing a growl. The sun was gone now, so it was dark outside. She didn't have enhanced sight or hearing, so she didn't know how far away they were or how close they could be. But when she squinted her eyes, she seen two sets of red glowing eyes. Red eyes, those are rouges. Everly turned the key in the ignition and turned the Jeep on, but before she could get it into drive, something collided with her window, causing a scream to leave her mouth. Thankfully, it didn't break, but when she looked over and seen the red eyes backing up and to ram at the window again, she knew it would the second time they hit it. Everly quickly shuffled into the passenger seat before they could hit the door. The moment she opened her passenger side door, the glass on the driver's side broke. As she got out, she felt claws scratch her back as she jumped from the seat and onto the ground. Everly hissed and slammed the door behind her as she took off running into the woods. She knew it was a risk going towards another packed territory, but her life was in danger, and she didn't want to die. Not like this. Her feet halted when she heard a child crying, and she panicked. Did they attack a child too? Taking off to her left, she followed the sounds of the kids' cries. She could also hear the rouges following her. But she knew that since she crossed over onto another territory, that the warriors would have been notified of the breach instantly. She looked around. Not able to see much of anything really, could only hear them, but once she got closer, she ran towards him. He looked about 4, maybe 5 years old. I need you to hide. Can you do that? There's rouges here. I rushed out. I didn't want to scare him, but I needed him to hide. His little eyes widened, and he was holding his wrist. I took my sweatshirt off and as quickly as I could and made him a sling. What's your name? He wiped his face with the back of his free hand and sniffled. Jorge. His little Spanish accent came out soft, and it made me smile at him. Everly now. I told him my name. I looked behind him, then looked up. If I can get you into this tree, can you be quiet for me? He nodded instantly, becoming brave. I knew he assumed I could handle the big bad rouges on my own, but even I knew I couldn't even handle one. As I helped him onto the tree branch above me, I placed my finger to my mouth, telling him to stay quiet, and he nodded. A few seconds later, I heard a growl, then another behind me. My back stung as I swiftly turned around. There were 4 of them this time. My heartbeat was caught in my throat, and I swear I felt like I couldn't breathe. You'd think they wouldn't mess with me considering I smell like a rouge as well, but I'm also human, so that's why they are probably going after me. I'm easy prey. One of them jumped at me and I ducked, making him jump over me, but another one collided with my side, knocking me to the ground. I groaned because I fell into a sharp rock that stuck out of the ground a bit. When I sat up, I seen that they were circling me. One of them grabbed me from behind and sank their teeth into my shoulder and arm, making me scream loudly, but they were ripped away, their bite taking flesh with it. I looked behind me and seen 6 extra wolves here. They were bigger than the rouges. Adrenaline kicked in and I quickly got to my feet and went over to the tree and motioned for the little boy to come to me. Come here. They can take you home." I told him. Slowly, that sudden shot of adrenaline I felt began to dim, and the blood loss started getting to me, and as he jumped down to me, my knees gave way, making us both fall. I could still hear the fighting going on around us as I leaned my back against the tree trunk. I could feel little Jorge put his hand on my face, and I gave him a smile. "I'm fine, honey." He, however, didn't seem so convinced. "My daddy is the alpha. He can help you." His gray eyes seemed full of determination. "I'm human, Jorge. I'm not sure if Dash." "No, he will." He was looking around at the warriors who were now finished fighting and coming closer to us. One of them kneeled down beside us, his perfectly sculpted jawline clenching with the sheen of sweat on his face. Jorge looked over at him, his furrowed brows said everything. "She saved me, Uncle Kyle." The man who I know now as Kyle looked at him with tender eyes and nodded once. I was so out of it that I don't even remember being picked up. I could feel him running due to the wind whistling past my face. I seen lights come into view above me as I was placed on something soft. I'm surprised I was still awake, but I think it was more my fight or flight keeping me awake, because I had no clue where I was or what pack I ended up in. Looking down, I seen a nurse inject something into the floor that I didn't even know was there, and I instantly felt drowsy. I could hear Jorge crying, and that made me not want to go to sleep. I don't know why, but the need to protect him felt really strong, and I'd never felt that for another child before. Not even in my other pack. I looked over to see him sitting on a bed with the guy from before. I guess he felt me looking at him, and he looked up from the nurse who was wrapping his arm up. I gave him a weak smile, and he gave me one back. Whatever he was crying about was instantly forgotten. Feeling my eyes getting heavy, I tried so hard to fight to stay awake, but it was no use because sleep eventually took me under.